So just a few weeks ago, I had someone on the show from Iraq, well, I guess we can give her first name at least for now. So we had Lubna on the show, and she's a secularist and an atheist, all the things that we all stand up for. She's a minority within a minority. We can't get into the major details of what's going on with her right now, but suffice to say that you're helping facilitate some of this stuff. But these people are completely ignored.
Exactly.
And they're ignored by the people that should care about them the most.
Exactly. And the fact that this has not, I mean, it's been like, what, 15 years since 9/11 happened. And it's been the same mantra over and over again, that there is no policy change over who exactly the people we should side with. And we have a country like Saudi Arabia as our ally, and we have Qatar that I recently discovered funds the Muslim Brotherhood,
which is using slave labor, by the way, to build World Cup stadiums.
And I want to raise this point, which I think is very important. The Muslim Brotherhood is actually much more dangerous than the ideology of Wahhabism is, because they're able to work on the grassroots level, and also they have double faces. And what's happening is that I wouldn't say infiltrated the U.S. government, because that may me sound like a fucking lunatic, but they have
a lot of people say it though.
But they have been in places, in think tanks, on the shows everywhere that told the Western world that these other guys, the secularists and stuff, are traitors and they're not the good guys, and we should help us. And so they kind of have a blocked for channels like Al Jazeera, and they have kind of blocked this concept of secular Arab. It's like they wanted to push this image of the authentic Arab, of the person who. So we are Islamists and we have to settle with it. While in fact my policy and that I want to change is that we should change what we need to settle, what we're asking us to settle with. We should not settle with Islamists, we should not settle with jihadists. We have to support those who agree with our values.
Does all of that ring as true to you as it does to me, in terms of that we're skipping a step here? We're skipping caring about the right people because of for all the wrong reasons, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's sort of extremely symptomatic of sort of criticism now that's happening in the left, and I guess, you know, the problem with that also is that it's created like a vacuum where you have like people like Trump who's coming in and inciting so much hate against these people. You know, like and blanketing all Muslims, and that's just feeding ends up feeding the problem.
Right, and you come from the academic world. I mean, as I mentioned at the top of the show, you got your PhD at MIT.
Not yet.
You're on your way to your PhD at MIT.
Not yet.
In genetics, right? So
yes.
you know your stuff. You're in the academic world. Do you see this? I think one of the things people struggle with is this coming more from the students or the academics? Or is it both?
No, actually, it's more coming from the students. For sure. I would say that on campus at MIT, we haven't had that much incidents, but over the T stuff at Harvard, they've had way more incidents. Like recently, the law school had to change. I think they're voting to change their crest because it features 3 bushels of wheat. And they're also like house masters now.
Right.
At the dorms, they've lost their titles. They're called dean faculty assistants or something. So the question becomes, what happens to your master's degree or like master of the universe? Like just words like that. I posted something recently about, like, in chemistry, one of the greatest achievements in the last couple months was that they actually created a new synthetic element that's stable. So we completed the 7th row of the periodic table. And in the article, they called it a man-made element, right? And
oh Lord,
they had to change. Where this is going. So they had to change the word "man-made" because people took a lot of offense at the word. They said, "Oh, this is it's excluding women. It implies that it's the patriarchy who's involved in this." But in Latin, the word "manus" is hand, and "man-made" doesn't really come from man. So the etymology
comes from human.
Yeah, right, and the etymology is people take offense first, and that's the first reaction. So I was telling Faisal this many times, like, the problem with what's happening, in the regressive left movement is this desire to see the worst in everybody. For example, Matt Taylor, the Rosetta scientist, right, who landed the comet, the probe on a comet. He wore a shirt, inappropriate for an interview, but the first instinct is to assume.
Wait, can you tell people what the shirt was? Just
the shirt had it was like a tessellation of like pinup girls, like with guns or something. It was a cartoon. It was actually a gift from a female artist friend.
Right. It was just a silly shirt.
It was a silly shirt.
Yeah.
It wasn't very graphic at all. I mean, I wouldn't wear it, but and he wore that, announcing the triumphant achievement of his team, and immediately just the outcry online forced him into tears, when he had to apologize, and I don't know how you make the leap from guy wearing shirt to just infer. I mean, if I feel like a big part of this is wanting to see this racist, sexist, whatever it is, intent. The moment you catch something that maybe can be interpreted that way, they interpret it in the most extreme way. And then the reaction starts there, and then the whole outrage industrial complex begins online.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's a cycle, right? Like there's that little thing, you find it, and then blow up, and then the people who criticize then there are people who are bitching about the bitching, and then it's just a cycle.
Yeah. So what do you guys make of that mind reading portion of this? Because I had never
psychoanalysis PhDs are being thrown around everywhere.
Well, because when the first episode of the show, as you guys know, when I had Sam Harris on, he said something about the mind reading. They want to just find something in you, which is exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
And once they can find the grain of something, now they can extrapolate it into every which way that they want to judge you, which is so the reverse, I think, of how rational people actually operate and how evidence-based people and people of science actually
and also
operate.
just compassion that is supposedly part of liberalism, right?
Yeah.
It should be one of the things that we aspire to, is to actually see the best in people. I don't know, that's just me, but
I mean,
I don't think it's just
one of the things that make me sad, because this outrage requires energy, right? So I wish that I'm not trying to trivialize their experience or whatever they may think of me, but I wish some of that outrage and all these hashtags would be used to advocate for people like Lubna, for people like Raif, for people who are I wish that energy of so much if they get offended by a T-shirt, or a Halloween costume, I wish they get offended by women getting acid thrown in their faces by the Taliban in Pakistan.
Right. Yeah.
I wish they are offended by bloggers getting beheaded and in Bangladesh. I wish that some of that energy, I'm not trying to tell them not to talk about these stuff, but I wish some of that energy, at least maybe just 10%.
Right.
And I'm not really asking for much. 10% is pretty good. It's lower than probably the taxes of Trump is asking. And 10%, if they just use some of that outrage, some of that energy, and create a movement, at least of solidarity. I don't want them to donate $1 million or $1 billion. Just a movement of solidarity to show that we people in free societies side with the values that you side with. And that, for me, when I was living there, it meant a lot to me when people told me that. And I want to replicate that to help the folks over there who need that sense of solidarity other than getting bothered by
doesn't it show
freaking T-shirt.
Doesn't it show a certain level of narcissism too? Because it seems to me that when they do this, they're just saying, well, I can't blame everything on myself, and now that's a problem. They want, you know what I mean? If they can't link America to something, it's not even a problem.
Yeah.
So that also seems to be a bit of the.
If you look at like many of their, what definition of racism is power plus privilege, right?
Oh my God.
Is it? Am I getting it right?
Power plus privilege.
Yeah.
Or sexism also. Same
It's
thing.
that
Any ism now.
they
The new
see-
definition.
Yeah.
Because they look, so for example, racism, they redefine racism. So racism is no longer about people hating of people of other race, but rather it is who are the people on the privileged side. So it has to be, so at the top of the pyramid, like we talked about last time, there is a cisgender white male, he's worse than ISIS.
Right.
And so then there's probably ISIS because they're brown males, at least some of them, except probably the social media guys who are mostly white, but the other, so it's like a pyramid, and the top of the pyramid is a white cis male, and they think he is the biggest problem.
Right. So ironically, what they're saying actually is that you, as an Arab brown skinned man, you could not be racist
against you,
even against me, even
maybe
if
he could be racist against me, but maybe not.
No,
you.
but I suspect that someone of that an Asian person is probably
At least
lined
more
up.
complicit, yeah,
It's
with
very sort of
privilege,
right
yes.
next to white privilege.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, but that you, even if you were endorsing white genocide, it wouldn't be viewed as racism because you're being oppressed.
And that has been actually like, there was this case, I think it was in Goldsmith University, in which one of the students was talking about white genocide. She created this hashtag white genocide. And then she said, this is my way to express my grievances. Yeah, because there's no other way except talking about genocide. Like, you cannot get more creative than, and then she said, this is not actually racist what I was talking about, because I am from, except the fact that she lives in freaking London, she's unprivileged, and she's trying to express her grievances against the people from the upper class.
So last night in the debate, didn't Bernie say something about how white people don't know what it's like to be poor? I mean,
something of that effect. I mean, I did not watch the debate because I was out, but I saw this quotes as being circled. Yeah, and because they will say, well, I mean, some of the concept. I mean, I agree with some of the concepts what is called intersectionality. I mean, it may. Except the fact that many people who say it are crazy nut jobs.
Yeah, and it's extremely dangerous.
It has a good concept is that the people who are, for example, black have less likely to get jobs because of their names.
Yes.
So it is difficult if you are a black to raise to middle class than if you are white to rise to middle class. So there's some truth to this, but what is happening is that it is mixed up with so much baggage of bullshit that it doesn't make sense anymore. Just like when the far right talk about we should be fearful of all of these things, except the fact that some of, like, infiltration of the Muslim Brotherhood, all of these things, like, because they're so insane about so many other things that, like, whenever there's a shooting, Obama's trying to take our guns, like, you don't take them anywhere seriously whatever they say. So what's happening with the intersectionality and the people on the far left, some of what they say has truth to it, is that there are people who are, because of their race, I mean, there are like studies done even like based upon the name, like if people who have like different names, if they sound foreign or whatever, they are less likely to get employment. So yes, there is a sense of, but when somebody's trying to bullshit us,
well, then they extrapolate it into gays for Hamas, and then
which is very
doing?
So that is where like the like a huge bucket of bullshit is there. It's like when all of these like intersectionality and critical race theory,
you literally start defending people that would have you killed.
Because under the name they're a minority and all of these. So it's eventually gets like it's like destructive when it's all this stuff mixed together.
Right. So as three people here sitting here that all came at different points in our lives. So I'm a third generation American. You guys are first generation, but different skin colors and that all of that stuff. We're putting it out there. We're not fooling anybody. You sort of touched on this earlier, but American exceptionalism.
Yes.
Do you believe in American exceptionalism? Because I
do,
get
actually.
all right, I do. I do too. But please tell me why.
I like this quote by Bill Clinton. He said, "Whatever is wrong in America can be fixed by what's right in America." And as it stands now, before the elections, I can say that. I can say that with a straight face.
Yeah, we shall see.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a free speech absolutist, and I think it's something that's just, if human dignity is to be upheld, we should be free to express ourselves. That's just almost a basic human right. And there's no other country other than the United States that upholds that as resolutely.
So doesn't that directly correlate to everything you do as a secularist and as a humanist? Because you know what it was like to not be able to express all those freedoms. And the reason I prefaced it by saying that we're all different races and all that is that we all have the same opportunity here.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. But people on the left don't like if you say American.
Yeah,
do you believe in American exceptionalism?
That's a good question, actually. I mean, I haven't thought about it that much.
I'm putting you on the spot here. Now I'm going to get the left to hate you even more.
Yeah, well, I think I already done a good job the previous interview, but I think I do. I mean, it really depends on what you mean by it.
Well, that people from all over the world.
Yeah, I mean, I live in New York City, and I can see people from tons of countries living together for the most part peacefully and living under one system, one umbrella. Yes, I mean, I think it's a wonderful idea. I think America itself is a wonderful idea, is that despite the fact that obviously the history of it was not as peaceful as I wish it to be, but I mean, Jefferson, who was one of my heroes, called America the kind of experiment, is that let's put these values and let's see how they work together. And I think for the most part, it's a great experiment. That this concept of the new world of the American Constitution is that one of the first documents I was translating when I was in Iraq and trying to spread the flyers around was the Bill of Rights of the United States. For me, it's like my Bible. It's like one of the most important, and considering the time that it came from, obviously. I mean, now we take it for granted. People say like freedom of speech is a human right, but before, this concept of separation of powers and separation of church and state, which are for me like the most important things about the American Constitution. These used to be radical ideas back at the time. And established this nation from people all over the world, and here we are. I don't think this can happen in many countries around the planet. It was
Right now.
Three of us from different parts of the world who have a different culture or background can come together and have a discussion about ideas.
Right, and that's the power of ideas. And I love that you brought up Thomas Jefferson in this, because about a year ago I was at Monticello, which was his home in Virginia.
It's a great place.
And it's a great place, and they tell his story. And it's really interesting because progress takes time, so that they taught, look, this is a man who owned slaves. Not only did he own slaves, he had relations with at least one, I think several of the women. So he was, in effect, having sex with his slaves. So obviously something's not, I mean, that's not right on many, in terms of slavery and in terms of women's rights and a zillion different reasons. But at the same time, he was doing so much good for the country, and so many of the ideas he had led to goodness. So it shows that not everything is through that kernel of evil. You want to find the goodness in people.
Yes, but there is a trend nowadays to apply modern moral framework to look at the past, and you're starting to see that with Oxford's Rhodes Must Fall campaign and things like that. We're looking back into the past and now faulting, leaders in history for views they had. So,
How dangerous do you think that is, as someone in the academic world? I mean, I find that to be incredibly dangerous. We're going to look back on everybody one day as culture changes. We're going to look back on everybody and go, well, see, he was racist.
Martin Luther King was a homophobe.
Yeah.
Right. Although I think he actually said something about that case should be able to get married or something to that effect.
Yeah,
but yes, we would be able to do that to everybody.
It's starting on campus, right? So Woodrow Wilson School at Princeton University.
Right.
They're debating removing his name. The question is, again, it ultimately comes down to, why do you feel like that helps? Is it something that's does it feel like a personal attack? And if we weigh out every single person with that kind of moral calculus, you're really not gonna find any ideal person in the past.
Right, there's literally nobody, and that's why I keep saying the left just eats itself.
Right.
I've seen this over and over. Unless you're look, we can see the way sometimes, even with Bernie, they've turned on Bernie a little bit with some of the race issues with Black Lives Matter, and it's like, here's a guy who was arrested in the 60s for standing up against segregation and things like that. So it's like, you have to have a better set of principles than something that'll just come around and get you one day.
Yeah, and there also, like I talked about history, I mean, there also needs to look at the context and the timing. I mean, if Jefferson wanted slavery to be part of the United States, he would have written it in the Constitution. So obviously, I mean, the guy was sophisticated enough that it takes time to understand what Jefferson. But yeah, when it comes to mind reading, they seems like they are pretty good over there.
Yeah, it also shows, I guess, that we have personal shortfalls, that you can somehow, maybe in the public, be better than you are personally, right?
Yeah.
So he's writing all of these things about equality for man, and clearly led the groundwork to free the slaves, right?
Yeah.
And yet, at the same time, at the personal level, he didn't. So, it's extremely complex.
When you're talking about, and now we're bringing the conversation global, is that, like, for example, like as I work in the human rights field, I mean, I would be honest, like, for a start, in Saudi Arabia, I'm not going to advocate for same-sex marriage, but I would at least advocate the concept that gays are human beings, equal rights. And then you can build a foundation that over time, because, I mean, I assume, like, based upon many of Jefferson's readings, and back to the life eating itself, is like, there was this congressman, he also was a civil rights icon, Lewis, his last name is Lewis, I forgot, who endorsed Hillary Clinton.
Oh, John Lewis.
John Lewis, yes. So, I mean, I cannot vote this election, so I can bash any candidate I want. And so what happened when he endorsed Hillary, whether somebody I agree with or don't, that's irrelevant. The amount of attacks that he got from the far left was pretty impressive about how they are anti-racist. Like, they were calling him pretty racist terms,
right?
Uncle Tom and the N-word and all of that, because he endorsed a candidate they didn't like. this is itself the left eating itself,
Right.
because they supposedly be anti-racist, but they're
It's
using
still on their side of the ticket.
There was a quote from FDR that I really like. It was when he asked him, "Why do you support the fascists in Nicaragua?" They said, "He's a son of a bitch, but he's our son of a bitch." so if Mr. Lewis endorses the candidate they like, then he's okay. Then that is what the black person should vote for. But if not, then he is.
Everything.
So talk about, they claim to be, I mean, there's a new term called the anti-racist racists, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
I know it has double negative, and also
I have to work this through at home.
and also there is the Islamophobia of the fear of being perceived as Islamophobic is now, so like they're afraid of being perceived as Islamophobic and advocate for Islamophobia as well.
There's no doubt that one's real. All right, we have to wrap up here, so I'm going to give you the last word. What can we do? What is the number one thing we can do to help these ideas spread?
So what Faisal was saying about the outrage, he wishes to divert the outrage manufactured by all these small little incursions into global issues. I think that's actually something that he's working on movements, and it's a very worthwhile cause, because with that we can engage people who do live in Western democracies to be more active and to be more aware of the perspective of what's going on, the persecution that's going on, in closed societies.
Yeah.
So that's for me a very key thing.
Yeah, and while we have our power of freedom, we may as well use it, right? All right, well, I have a feeling we're going to continue this in the green room because I didn't even pick this thing up. All right. Well, for more of the work that Faisal and Melissa do, check out the Global Secular Humanist Movement on Facebook. Go to movements.org, and thank you guys for watching, and we'll do it again next week.